Hello, so you're welcome to my channel, and the topic for today will be the differences between the UK and Canada. Why? So the reason for that is because people literally ask me this question all the time. Oh, how is Canada different from the UK and all that? So I just thought, you know what, let me just put up a video on it, giving my own perspective on, how the two countries um, are not alike per se, right? So that, in the future, if someone should ask me, I'll just say, you know what, you can watch my video. Um, yeah, so this is not something that will be heavily curated because I just believe in being spontaneous and, giving a very honest view on things. Right, so I have my little notepad on the side, and I'll start with the differences that I came up with that I noticed, right? So I think I have around seven here. Yeah. So let's get started. So the first one is the scale of the country. The United Kingdom is a more compact country in the sense that, as in terms of geographical size, right? And Canada, I think Canada is probably the second biggest country in the world. So Canada is absolutely massive. And, what does that mean? What it means is that, when you look at things like public transport, having a system that covers such a large space, is not that easy in terms of logistics. So in um in Canada, you need to drive more, right? Because, like, for example, you want to go to the other side of town, and normally, if you drive, it will take, let's say, 15 minutes, right? You take public transport, it takes 1 hour, 30 minutes. Why? Because, let's say, the bus or the train is taking a route that is a lot longer, and obviously, you might need to take maybe two or three buses. So it's it is not really like efficient to move around using public transport because of the sheer size of the cities. And so yeah, distance is the first thing that you notice almost immediately. The United Kingdom is more compact, right? Yes, I know, like in some places like London, you can wholly rely on public transport, but even generally, it's a smaller size and it's easier to use trains and all that, right? But in Canada, if you are looking at doing, performing different activities, like for example, you want to go to work, you want to socialize, taking public transport is like a second job, basically a second job that is not paid. And then, yeah, so that's the first thing. Canada is massive, so the UK is more compact, right, and more dense. So the thing about Canada is, even the fact that it's massive doesn't mean that it is as dense as the UK. So the UK is smaller and has, more people in a smaller space, right? More activities going on. So Canada is bigger and has fewer people. So it is more spread out. So what that means is that when you want to, for example, you want to go for a walk, you might literally not see anyone for 20, 30 minutes on the sidewalk because there's this culture of driving and also that's the first thing that really that you notice almost immediately. So the second thing is the speed. It's the speed of things. I think the thing about the UK is when you look at the tempo, right, I think the UK maybe more is a faster tempo, right? Like for example, you want to apply for something, right? Like you want to apply for, let's say, police reports. In the United Kingdom, you can apply for the police reports. You have two options, right? You can apply using the standard process, which will take like a month, and you can pay for, faster processing. We can take like 2 days. So in the UK, in some cases, right, you can pay for speed. But Canada, the process is the process, right? You want to apply for something, you wait your turn. So when you've been in the United Kingdom and you come to Canada, it's like, okay, you know what? When you are used to, I think, in this, with respect to these particular points, right? I think it's easier if you are moving from Canada to the United Kingdom because, Canada has a deliberate pace, right? So when you move to the UK, like, wow, things are a lot faster, just in the way things are processed. So that's a big difference. But when you move from the United Kingdom to Canada, it's a bit of a shock, right? Because you are used to like a faster tempo. So it's like, I think for those of you that watch football, it's like moving from the Premier League to maybe the Italian league, right? So if you are used to playing at a faster tempo and you come to a more deliberate tempo, it's like, wow. So the system will force you to slow down. So that's another difference. And yeah, so speed, right? You can't bring the same UK like mindset of doing things very quickly or trying to force processes through. Canada, things will be done, right? And you have to be patient. In the UK, sometimes, oh, I want it done today. I'll pay more money, right? People know exactly what I'm talking about because it applies in different scenarios. So Canada is not like that. It's more of like, okay, you know what? The process is the process, and it's just the way it is. So you plan accordingly, really. So the third thing is the tax system. And I'm not a financial advisor, obviously, but one thing that is different in Canada is the sales tax. In the United Kingdom, they call it value added tax, right? So in Canada, you have sales tax. So in the United Kingdom, it is fixed. You pay 20%. But in Canada, what you pay depends on the province you are in, right? So, and some things are exempt, some things are not. Like, for example, frozen food is exempt from sales tax, right? And I think there is something that they say about, like, if you buy something in a that has 6 items in a pack, there is like maybe a 0% sales tax on it. So this is something that is very important because even when you are shopping, you are like, okay, if I if I buy this, it won't have sales tax. Okay, you know what? So it's something that actually affects things like budgeting and all that. But in the United Kingdom, it's like, you know what? The sales tax is what it is, and it is as simple as that. So yeah, the tax system is different, and I think another thing about Canada is entrepreneurship is more common, at least in my field anyway, because you have two options, right? You work for an employer, obviously they file everything for you, and you can work, you can create a company, you can work as a sole proprietor. So the difference is that when you work as a company, sometimes you can benefit from lower tax rates, right? And you can control more of your um, you can control more of how and when you receive, your income and all that. So I think one thing I noticed in Canada is that having your own company is is more of a common place thing, right? So the United Kingdom is less common, right? But and just to be clear, in Canada it's more like, oh, you have your company. It's not really seen as a big deal. It's just like, okay, how you structure your affairs and all that. But as I said, I am not a financial advisor, right? If you want financial advice, obviously you should consult someone specializing in that area. Okay, so the tax system is different, right? And another thing is the sports. National sport is different. So in the United Kingdom, football is the national sport, right? So every Saturday, Sunday, people go to the pub, people go to the stadiums to watch football, right? But in Canada, it's hockey. So they have, I think it's ice hockey, right? So that's like the national sports here. And when you come in, it's something that is important to learn about as well, because when you talk about things like small talk, at least if you have an idea about what's going on in hockey, it's something that can grease conversations as well. Yeah. So in the United Kingdom, football is the undisputed major sport, while in Canada is hockey. And so now this third point, the next point, yeah, I think is the fourth of it, right? Next point is also very important. This is the language, right? So in the United Kingdom, English is like the major language, right? Of course, when you go to other regions, like Scotland, you have Scots. You go to Wales, you have Welsh, right? But I'm saying functionally, English is spoken like in the business world. English is like the official language, right? And across the territory. So in Canada, there are two official languages. You have English and you have French. So it is I would say English is spoken at least in a large part of the country, and you have some sections, some areas where French is predominant, like you have Quebec, right? That is like a French province, French first. You have New Brunswick, which is like a province that is bilingual, and you also have Ottawa. So Ottawa is the capital city for just in terms of politics and all that. So since it is a constitutionally bilingual country, the constitution said the official languages are English and French, right? And English is dominant. So this is something that also causes a bit of tension. For example, Quebec doesn't want English to, totally lead to the disappearance of French. And they've brought in some laws saying, oh, you know what? I think if you have at least 25 employees, workplace activities should mainly be in French. Even things as like small as science or science like public science should be in French. You go to the supermarket, even what they write on products, oh, it should be in French, you know. It's yeah, so I would say based on the constitution, it is bilingual, but in actual facts, I would say English is spoken to a large extent in a large percentage of the country. And even when you go to Quebec as well, right? There are people that are unilingual, people that are bilingual, right? So it's not as if, oh, people only speak French there. The reason why it's important for them to speak English is because, they do business with other parts in the country that are English speaking, and also the United States. Sometimes the capital might come from the United States, and it's important to be able to communicate with them. So, in terms of the language, right? English, I'll say English is spoken, at least in a very large percentage of the country. So yeah, functionally, English is like, the main language, but this is something that the government is trying to rectify as well by encouraging the use of French. And this, like when you see some government postings, they say, oh, this is only effectively, they say something like, oh, bilingual imperative. That is, if you are bilingual, then you can apply. You understand? And even in terms of like the immigration policy, so the government is also making some efforts to make sure that French is not just a paper official language, right? So yeah, that's another thing. So if you and the thing about French is it is like I said, it is widely spoken in some places, right? So there is this phenomenon where people that speak French tend to, go to the French speaking regions, maybe Ottawa, New Brunswick, Quebec, and all that. And yeah, I know I spoke about the distance and all, but what I would say that would shock you is that these places that I'm even talking about, like I spoke about Quebec, right? Quebec is bigger than the United Kingdom, by multiple fold, right? So it's a situation where yes, Canada is a country, right? But it is a country that includes regions that are as big as countries, if you get what I'm saying. So you have you know s- so it's split into provinces. Basically, you have Ontario, you have I said New Brunswick, you have Quebec, right? I think Prince Edward. So it's split into different regions, and those regions are very, very, very big. They are very big. So um the next point is, but this is more of a political point, really, right? In terms of an alliance, right? So Canada is part of they call it CUSMA in the country. So this is an agreement between them, the United States and Mexico. So the agreement is more of like trade, right? Because when you think about it, you might look, oh, the European Union, free movement. No, the focus is on trade to make it easy for goods to move across borders without tariffs and all that, right? And here, the United Kingdom used to be part of the European Union, but I think since COVID, they are not part of it anymore. So that's just like another point. And yeah, so I spoke about trade barriers. This is something that will shock you, right? Now, when people hear Canada, they think, "Oh, wow, is one is just maybe a small country." People tend to they don't realize the scale. This is something that will shock you, right? Between provinces, I said Canada is divided into provinces, right? So between provinces, there are trade barriers. So it is not easy to move from one province to another. Yes, it is still the same Canada, right? It's not easy to move from one province to another. Here's another difference that is very surprising for people because now the United Kingdom, you can easily move. Okay, I want to live in Manchester. You move, you're in Manchester, and that's not really an issue. But in Canada, for you to move from one province to another is a bit complicated. Let me explain. So first of all, licenses are provincial, right? So I'm an accountant, and obviously the license for me will be the CPA, right? Which I'm doing in Ontario. So I want to move from Ontario to Quebec, right? That's just an example. I want to move from Ontario to, let's say, New Brunswick. Okay, so what is the difference? The difference is that you don't just move with an Ontario license and just okay, I have the Ontario license and just move. You have to go through the process of transferring your qualification to the new. And another thing that should be noted, this I'm looking at it from a qualification point of view, right? Yeah, the CPA has been streamlined to an extent, but you want to go to Quebec, you must do a French exam and pass. So that's just an example I'm giving, right? The second thing is that different provinces have different requirements. Like for example, you want to ship milk from Ontario to let's say Calgary, right? Ontario might say the milk should be in this container. Calgary might say the milk should be in this container, right? So it is a bit complicated. Even when you look at so that's even in terms of goods, right? Human beings, even as a human being, right? For you to move from one province to another is not as straightforward because a new province might have different requirements in terms of like your driver's license, especially if you are not fully done with it. And so it's I would say there is more friction even in terms of like so basically you have something they call the provincial health card. It's just like health insurance, right? So moving provinces again, I think there is a 3 month waiting period before you can like get the card in another province. So there is a bit of friction in terms of like, that geographic relocation, even within the country itself. So that's something that's, I think it can be like minimized or that is not noticed when one is not in the country per se. And so yeah, that is it with respect to the free trade even within because it's just like moving from one country to another, right? When you look at the friction involved, yeah. So yeah, they have I think that's the Canadian Free Trade Agreement to streamline this, but provinces still have, some form of power to make sure that, okay, um, to make sure that they protect some industries that they want to protect, right? And given that these provinces are very big, even bigger than many countries, they advocate for themselves and for, their own interest as well. So when you look at it, so Canada is like the umbrella of different provinces with different interests. So Canada is now trying to bring all these provinces together. Yeah, so that is that's another difference that will surprise, a lot of people when you talk about, oh, Canada, Canada. So when you say um I'm in Canada, and you tell someone else I'm in Canada is like saying I'm in Europe. Do you understand? Which part of the place are you in? You get. So that is how that is how it differs from, most countries, right? So it's the scale is out of this world. And yes, this is the last but not the least, right? On the list, housing. Housing is the last but not the least, right? So, in terms of housing, I would say Canada tends to have better insulation, right? So, what I mean by that is during winter, when the weather is a bit cold, right? The way the houses are built means that you are warmer indoors, right? And when you turn on your heater, it's more efficient. So, but the UK tends to be tends to be less, have houses that are less insulated, so you feel colder indoors, right? And the second thing about housing is uniformity. Like in the UK, many houses are the same, or I'll just say the same architecture. Like when you go to a block, right, and you're just walking down the street, they have a specific pattern in which they build their houses, and many of them tend to follow that pattern. But you walk down the street in Canada, like I just look out the window now, virtually every house is different. So when I say different, I mean every house has its own um nuance to it, right? Like for example, this house has a garden, the next one doesn't have a garden, right? So the garden has been paved, right? Even in terms of like how it is layered, right? In some houses, you can you can sit upstairs. There's like a porch upstairs. You can sit. Some don't have, right? So basically, people have more freedom to like customize their houses in Canada. So that's another difference that I noticed. So yeah, this is almost 30 minutes, and yeah, I'll say those are the main things that I've seen, at least in my opinion, right? There are other things as well, and maybe I can also do a video on the similarities, but like I said, the reason why doing this video makes a lot of sense is because I obviously get asked this question many times. So yeah, um, I hope you've enjoyed it and it has like given you, a broader perspective with respect um to the differences between the United Kingdom and Canada. And then yeah, you can support me by liking, subscribing, and then You can also let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and then you can let me know things that you would like me to talk about, because like I said, I just keep it real, and I don't really want my videos uh, to be too scripted, because I want to maintain that natural flow of the conversation, right? So um, hope you've enjoyed the video. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you very much.